for the American Canyon Fire Protection District Board meeting for September 27, 2022. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. Roll call, please.
Board Member Joseph?
I'm here.
Board Member Oro?
Here.
Board Member Washington?
Here.
Vice Chair Abudamos?
Here.
And Chairman Garcia.
Here, thank you. We'll now go to the report on closed session, confirmation, reportable action. Mr. Ross?
Chairman Garcia, board members, members of the public, your board convened an open session at 5:31 to address matters agendized for closed session consideration. And after ascertaining that there were no comments on closed session, you adjourned to closed session at the same time, 5:31 p.m. to address those matters. With respect to closed session agenda item number 1, there was no reportable action under the common law attorney-client privilege, and that provided by Government Code Section 54956.9D2. With respect to closed session agenda item number 2, there was no reportable action under the provisions of 54957B. You concluded closed session at 3:21 p.m. That would conclude the report unless there are questions.
Any questions, directors? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Ross. We'll move on in our agenda now to proclamations and presentations. Gives me great pleasure this evening, gives all the board great pleasure this evening to have a proclamation for our Fire Prevention Month, October 2022. American Canyon Fire Protection District proclaiming the month of October 2022 as Fire Prevention Month. Whereas the American Canyon Fire Protection District is committed to ensuring the safety and security of all those living and visiting the city of American Canyon. And whereas fire is a serious public safety concern, both locally and nationally, and homes are the location where people are at the greatest risk from fire. And whereas when the smoke alarm sounds, American Canyon residents may have less than 2 minutes to escape to safety and should make a home escape plan and practice with everyone in the household, including visitors. And whereas American Canyon residents should make sure everyone in the home knows how to call 911 or the local emergency from a cell phone or a neighbor's phones. And whereas American Canyon residents should practice using different ways out. Residents in real emergency should know get low and go under the smoke to get out quickly and should never go back inside the home for the people, pets, or things. And whereas the 2022 Fire Prevention Week theme, don't wait, plan your escape. Plan ahead. Make a home fire escape plan. Pick a meeting place, communicate with everyone in your house where to meet in case of an emergency, and practice your home fire drill. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Leon Garcia, Chairman of the Board of Directors of the American Canyon Fire Protection District, hereby proclaim October 22 as Fire Prevention Month throughout the city of American Canyon. And I urge all people of American Canyon to be aware of their surroundings, look for available ways out in the event of a fire or other emergency. Respond when the smoke alarm sounds by exiting the building immediately, and to support the many public safety activities. And with great pleasure, I was looking for the hard copy. Thank you. Who would like to come forward and present it? Chief Bellier? I'm sure you have someone comment. I'm going to get to you after that.
Thank you, Chair. As you said, Fire Prevention Month is in October, and it's something that really I challenge all the residents here in the community to take to heart. It could be as simple as ensuring that you're changing the batteries in your smoke detectors. That is a service that we at the Fire District do provide. If those residents do have challenges with changing their smoke detector batteries, they can give us a call. We can come out and help them. We also, for those that don't have the ability to secure a smoke detector, we can provide smoke detectors for them as well. And smoke detectors are just one part of it. If you have a family in your home, getting what we refer to as an exit plan, or having everyone familiar with, if you do have an event of a fire, how you're going to get out of your home, because your traditional path of using your front door, your garage door, may be blocked. So practice looking at using your windows or other means of egress. But then once you get out of the building, the most important part is establishing an area where the family can meet after you get out of the fire, so that when the fire department gets there, we know that everyone has safely evacuated the building. I'll talk a little bit more about it in my chief's report later on, but also as part of Fire Prevention Month, we'll be holding an open house at our fire station on Donaldson Way on October 8th. And we'll also have more home safety tips for the residents here. But for the meantime, thank you very much for this proclamation and recognizing the importance of Fire Prevention Month here in American Canyon.
Well, we certainly value the service provided. It's outstanding work, and again, our big thank you. What would be the hours for the open house?
It is 11 to 2. From 11 to noon, we will be having a quiet open house for our residents that have special needs within the community, that loud, boisterous noises can cause them some challenges, or maybe even prevent them from wanting to come to the open house. So we'll have 11 to noon for a quiet open house, so that some of those special need residents can still get the information. The other thing...
Thank you for being sensitive to that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The other thing, I would be remiss, while I'm certainly honored to be the fire chief here and get to come up here and accept this proclamation, it's really the gentleman here in the back room, just happens to be B shift, but we have 2 other shifts here, but these are the individuals that are out every day making the positive difference in the community, and there to answer the call for our community residents. So again, just as the fire chief, I appreciate having the opportunity to stand in front of you to accept this proclamation, but it's truly the gentlemen in the back that are the backbone of the fire department and the ones that are out serving the community every day.
Well, to all our firefighters and staff, we certainly value what you do. You do an excellent job for us. Thank you very much. I think there's a related incident that occurred recently that Director Washington would like to tell us about.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Garcia. On September 11th, I had the unfortunate opportunity to have a resident come by my house. He's also a friend from American Canyon, and he suffered a heart attack. And it was Engine Crew 11 that responded to my home after my wife called 911. Acting Captain Paramedic Robert Rojas, firefighter Andrew O'Shaughnessy, and firefighter David Pratt. They responded within 2 minutes, and I got to give props also to the dispatcher, because she kept my wife on the phone, giving her directions of what she would need to do. You would think a wife of an ex-cop would have known what to do, but she freaked out like anybody else would have freaked out. And it was the dispatcher that kept her calm. And I sat there watching my friend turn gray to purple, and then the responders came. And by the time we got him to the hospital, the physician that operated on him immediately said, had it not been for the firefighters getting there so quickly and doing what they do best, he would not have made it. He initially, before coming to my house, said all he wanted to do was go lay down at home. It was his wife that told him to come to my house. And they said he would have passed away in his sleep had he went to sleep. So I want to thank the firefighters, all of you, for the training that you do, because you never know when you're going to need it. They came out to the house, and not one of them said, "Hey, Councilman Washington." They just went straight to work and did what they did, like I would have expected them to do. But I appreciate them from the bottom of my heart. I think that what you don't know sometime when you leave these homes is the outcome. This was one of those outcomes that could have ended up really negative, but because of your hard work, the hard training that you do, he survived. He's going to write a letter to the chief to kind of let him know how much he appreciates what happened. He's one of those guys that says, you know what, I don't want to go in an ambulance, I don't want to go. And he said that day. But the doctor made him understand that if it not had been for the fire department that came there so quickly, he would not have made it. So thank you. And I stand up and applaud you. Thank you.
Director Washington, firefighter O'Shaughnessy is typically a very humble gentleman, but he is sitting here in the audience. So if you would like to talk to him afterwards, I'm sure he would.
See, he didn't recognize me because I had all my Philadelphia Eagle gear on. I didn't have a suit coat jacket and stuff like that. But I appreciate you and your team. It means a lot.
Thank you. Well, thank you. We're moving on with our proclamation presentation this evening. We have a certificate of appreciation recognizing Martha Banuelos for 15 years of public service. Thank you. And I'm sure her boss has got a few comments to say.
I don't really know where to start, Chair. Martha's simply incredible. She's been with the fire district for 15 years. I call her the chief. She knows all the ins and outs of the fire district. She's just simply amazing, and her dedication and work ethic to the district is quite commendable. I mean, doesn't matter if it's weekends or after hours. If there's something that she feels needs to get done, it's going to get done. And I think the guys can attest to the value of what Martha brings. She wears lots of different hats for us here in the district, whether it's finance, it's HR, it's doing the clerk duties for the board meetings, preparing agendas. She's just, and she does all of it exceedingly well. And she's truly a very valued member of the team, and certainly made my transition to the chief role pretty easy with the knowledge that she has and the effort that she puts forward for the district. So, Martha, thank you. Here's to another 15 more. The value of Martha to the district, I mean, speaks volumes when both the engine crews are here, and I think they might have something for her if they'd like to present that to her. Chair, if that would be appropriate.
Get a picture, get a picture.
We got to stand over here so we can get remote board members in front.
Well, I guess we should be over there too. Get the board over here. Let's make sure we get everybody in the.
Okay, everybody on the remote smile too, please.
You guys might want to get in front of me. This is my house. I'm usually the one behind.
Okay, Martha can't see you.
Okay.
Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3. I don't know if anybody can hear me, but Martha, I agree with Chief Bellier. Here's to another 15 years at least. Because even the firefighters tell us they'd be lost without you. So that's saying a whole lot. Thank you for everything you've done for the city and the Fire Protection District.
Thank you, everyone.
Well, and just to finish things up, I've got the certificate to need to present you. You know, on a day-to-day basis, there's an old expression on a radio show watch would call people who hold it together la pegue. It's a corruption of Lee Page's glue. You're the glue that keeps the organization stuck together. You really are. I count on you a lot.
You know, if I can add one other comment, I forget her name, but before Martha, there was someone else, I think, was it Joy? Nancy? I think it was Joy. She had been the fire chief for 30 years, or not the fire chief. She was your position for 30 years. So on the subject of another 15, it would be completely consistent with fire district history for you to last another 15, and we certainly hope you do.
Thank you much. All right, we're moving on with our agenda this evening. Any agenda, public comment, please. Anything not on the agenda? Now's the opportunity.
I just want to congratulate Martha for all she does. You know, what more can you say? Everybody said it, but I just want to congratulate you and to tell everyone that's listening that I truly love our fire department. It's no secret. I'm the lady who runs out every time the fire trucks go by and waves. I'm that crazy lady. But anyhow, I thank the chief and the firefighters for, especially for myself as being part of CERT, and Laura for all the support that you give to us and all the training you give us. So thank you for everything you do.
Thank you. Anybody else? Go.
Fran Lemus. I'd just like to thank the firemen. I've called them a couple times, and I sure appreciate it. It's not any fun to fall and not be able to get up, and they've come to my rescue many times. So I thank them, and to you, Martha, too. You're always there when I call. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody online?
Justin Hull's got his hand raised.
People bring him in.
Hello, Mayor. This is
Good evening.
Justin. Good evening, everybody. I know why I am on Zoom. I never be doing that. I want to shout out our Claire. I think she doing a good job. Be a fire. Get that call in for 911, and I think she's doing a good job. Get ready for agenda. But at that time, I think we need to have me. We probably have to move me next time because it's weird because I'm not on the board member. So thank you. Have a good night.
All right, thank you. Anybody else? Anybody else online? Okay. Thank you. Then we'll continue with our agenda. Okay, we have agenda changes. We do have some consent items. If there's no objection or anything to being pulled, I will accept a motion to accept the consent calendar.
So move.
I'll second.
Motion second. Roll call, please.
Board Member Joseph?
Yes.
Board Member Oro?
Yes.
Board Member Washington?
Yes.
Vice Chair Abu Damos?
Yes.
Chair Garcia?
Yes. Thank you, directors. Moving on now, we have a public hearing, fiscal year 2022-23, approval of final operating and capital budget.
Yeah, Chair, I'd like to introduce Ken Campo, our financial consultant, to make this presentation on the adoption of our final budget for fiscal year 22-23. Ken, thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Chairman Garcia, members of the board. As the Chief mentioned, we're here to conduct a public hearing for the adoption of the final budget for fiscal year 22-23. We'll also take a look at the updated financial forecast for the district now that we're a few months removed from the preliminary budget that you adopted in June, and we have some final numbers from the county with respect to property taxes. We'll also take a look at the we have a brief funding update for the board regarding your OPEB and the pension unfunded liabilities. So we'll take a look at the funding progress on that. So as I mentioned, first thing we'll do is go through a presentation on the final operating capital budgets for fiscal 22-23. What I'll be focusing on primarily is the difference between the final budget and what was adopted last June as the preliminary budget for the district. So we'll first take a look at the summaries for the three funds for the district: General Operations Fund, the Fire Mitigation Fee Fund, and the Fleet Facilities and Equipment Fund. And then we'll get into some later slides that look to greater detail on the revenues and expenditures. So for the General Operating Fund, we're projecting an ending balance of $5.4 million. If we go back to the actual numbers for fiscal year 21-22, the final budget for that year was projecting a deficit of about $466,000. If you look at that over and underline, that's what I'm kind of focusing on here. And the actual numbers ended up about $30,000 deficit, so pretty much a break-even year for the district. Primarily the result of property taxes coming in, the cleanup payment. As I mentioned, I think when we adopted the preliminary budget, I thought that deficit would pretty much be wiped out when we got those final property tax numbers in. That was part of it, and the other part has to do with some expenditures that were delayed, and we'll talk about that in a couple of slides as well. As I mentioned, the property tax cleanup payment for June 30 was about $100,000. Gave us a higher ending balance, which gives us a higher beginning balance for the current fiscal year. The 22-23 preliminary budget was projecting a deficit of about $632,000. You can see now that's down to about $418,000. So about a $214,000 improvement in the projected ending balance there. And again, we'll get into those reasons for that improvement when we look at the detail. I'd like to point out, though, at this point, however, that the proposed budget does include those two battalion chief positions that we talked about in the earlier preliminary budget adoption. Those are two positions that would come online January 1. And the financial forecast includes those two positions going forward. So it would be half a year cost essentially for this current fiscal year, and then the full cost going forward. So this is just a summary on the Fire Mitigation Fee Fund. This is the fund that collects the mitigation fees or development impact fees, if you will. So those revenues fluctuate greatly depending on the level of development activity. I'd point out that the projected beginning balance for the year, that $992,000, it's about $250,000 less than what we presented previously during the preliminary budget adoption, primarily due to a delay in transfer going out of this fund, actually relating back to fiscal 2021. It took some time for the city to actually make the transfer. It didn't get picked up at the end of the last fiscal year. It didn't get picked up in the 21-22 year until late in the process. There's been some other issues with respect to revenues and expenditures being recorded late, but I think that has to do with some of the turnover maybe that's been happening in the city finance department. And the estimated revenue for 22-23 does include about $250,000 related to the Watson Ranch project, along with some projected fees associated with the commercial development for that project as well. The Fleet Facilities and Equipment Fund, the projected ending balance here is about $90,000 higher than what we looked at earlier in the preliminary budget adoption, primarily due to a reduction in some of the projected capital spending. We do now have the final numbers on the lease purchase for the 2 engines, so those numbers have all been updated, both the expenditures as well as the the lease proceeds on the revenue side. And so this includes half a year's worth of debt service for that engine lease financing, as well as about a half a year's financing with the enterprise lease that the board adopted, or the board approved, I should say. And we'll look at those details later as well. And feel free to stop me if you have any questions along the way. So this is looking at the final revenue, comparing their preliminary budget with the final budget. And this slide is looking at the general operating fund revenue. Overall, there's an increase of about $192,000 from preliminary to final, primarily property taxes. So about $187,000 of that is additional property tax revenue. Kind of the breakdown there is an additional $120,000 for current secured property taxes, and that's based on the actual final property tax revenue for last fiscal year. So we got those updated numbers in June, kind of carried over into our projection for the current year. And then there's we added another about $65,000, I think, for supplemental property tax revenue based on actual sales that took place for the first half of the year. So we're kind of, because the supplemental taxes are based on a calendar year basis. So we can kind of judge the first half of the year and kind of project where that supplemental tax revenue is going to go. So overall, improvement of about $200,000 in revenues. Let's just look at the revenues for the fire mitigation fee fund on the top. Not much of a change there. We reduced the mitigation fee revenue slightly, $466,000 to $442,000. Actual collections last fiscal year were a little less than we had projected. We kind of look at a 5-year rolling average to kind of project this revenue going forward. So that reduction for last year lowered that number a little bit. And as I mentioned, there's we added another $250,000 for the Watson Ranch project and related commercial development. Really not much of a change in the Fleet Facilities and Equipment Fund. We have the $50,000 from the Napa Logistics project it's going to be collected over a 10-year period, $50,000 a year. There was $40,000 more for the equipment lease financing, so that's was $1,840,000 as opposed to $1.8 million. It's not exciting enough for you guys? Yeah, we're just getting to the good stuff.
Leaving you the best part of the movie.
And then we have the ongoing transfer from the general operating fund. So overall, not much change in the revenue side for the Fleet Facilities and Equipment Fund. We'll look at the expenditures, general operating fund, personnel costs. Well, first off, overall reduction, just a slight reduction of about $22,000 from preliminary budget to final. We had a reduction in the OPEB contribution. We'll talk about that a little bit later when we look at the funding update. That went down about $100,000. But then we had dispatch costs that we added $75,000 to dispatch costs because we didn't get billed from or the district did not receive a bill from City of Napa for dispatch, and we're presuming that'll get caught up this year, so we just shifted that cost over. So the net impact was about a reduction of about $22,000. And again, the personnel cost does include the funding for the 2 battalion chief positions beginning January 1 of 2023.
Ken, if I can ask a question on the staffing. I'm trying to get a sense, because if you jump from 21-22 actual to 22-23 budget for personnel, it only goes up about $100,000. And so I'm trying to figure out, what was the cost of the 2 half battalion chiefs and how does that factor in? But you mentioned OPEB went down, so can you walk me from?
Yeah, it went down about $100,000.
Okay. So
the cost for the 2 battalion chiefs for half a year is, I believe, about $200,000.
So it's $200,000 a bat chief.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Sorry, 200,000 for the full position. So that's what we're looking at as a cost.
Correct.
Okay.
And that's what's built into the forecast going forward.
And
that's with salary and benefits.
Right. Okay, and so we're getting there because OPEB went down about $100,000 and the total is up $100,000. So that's, like, everything else is roughly the same, and that explains how we have that budget.
And we reduced some of the overtime costs because of the added personnel. And so overtime's a big factor. When you're looking at the actual from last year, there was, Chief, I think, $300,000 of overtime related to strike team activity that's not in 22-23.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm. So for the fire mitigation fee fund, the only thing budgeted this year, there's no need to transfer funds to Fleet Facilities and Equipment. There's $20,000 budgeted for a fee update that to make sure the mitigation fees are up to date as we move forward. We get ready for this increased development activity that's going to be occurring over the next, I don't know, 3, 5, 8 years. So that'll get started, I believe, when the master plan update is complete. So that master plan update will drive the facilities needs of the district going forward, and those facilities needs will drive the mitigation fee amount. So we want to make sure that we keep those fees up to date and making sure that new development, is paying its fair share. Fleet Facilities and Equipment Fund, there's an overall reduction of about $220,000 from the preliminary budget to the final budget. That's because we're now leasing through the enterprise lease. We're leasing some of that equipment that was going to be purchased. There was going to be two command vehicles. Now we're leasing those command vehicles along with some other auxiliary vehicles. That lease is about $32,000. That's half a year for 22-23, so that's about $64,000 a year on an annual basis. The $1.7 million for fleet, that's the cost of the 2 engines. There's another $120,000 or so in costs that's been moved into the following year, 23-24, for the upfitting, equipment, lighting, and all that sort of thing needs to go along with the engines. But that won't be incurred until next year. Just as a reminder, and so the lease payment on those engines, that's the $136,000, and that's again a half a year. So a full year is double that going forward, which is a reduction over what we thought it was going to be. We had budgeted $156,000. The interest rate came in less than what we had projected and budgeted for, so that payment has dropped down to $136,000. And you know that 3%, 3.4% or something that you're paying on that lease purchase looks pretty darn good right now, as these rates keep going up. Just a reminder, facilities, there's $70,000. Most of that is for station alerting. So I think that's about $60,000 of the $70,000. The $193,000 for equipment, that's gone up. It was $160,000. That was $20,000 for a rescue boat and $140,000 for new radios. We've added $33,000 for safety equipment for all the new hires, including the battalion chief positions. And we talked about the engine lease payments, slightly down, and then the vehicle lease that was approved subsequent to the adoption of the preliminary budget. This next slide looks at the projected ending general fund reserve vis-a-vis the district's general fund reserve policy. So just as a reminder to folks, the minimum operating reserve is 50% of projected revenues. That's kind of the operating funds that the district needs to carry it between, property tax payments. And then the contingency reserve is the rainy day reserve for the districts, and that's set at 20% of general fund expenditures. So the projected ending balance, again, is about $5.4 million. The operating reserve requirement is about $3,362,000. Contingency reserve of $3,393,000. So the total reserve requirements about $4.7 million. So the district would be, with this projected ending balance, about $634,000 above the board's reserve policy. That's pretty much the highlights of the differences between the preliminary budget that was adopted in June and the final budget that's being presented this evening. This is the updated financial forecast. Again, just the blue line represents the projected revenues going forward over the forecast period, and the orange line represents projected expenditures. And you can see we've been pretty much in balance the last few years, And then we're projecting that deficit for the next couple of years before a couple of years of break even. So this is a slightly better projection than we were looking at back in June, primarily, again, because of the increased property tax revenue. That pretty much wraps up the budget presentation. I was going to move on next to, if there's no questions, I was going to move on.
Questions? Any directors online have any questions at this point?
Not yet. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Okay, we'll continue.
I was going to move on to the funding summaries for OPEB and PERS. So this is the accumulation of funds in the OPEB trust. The OPEB trust is the trust fund is established to set aside funds to cover the retiree medical benefits that have been promised to the district's employees. This is as of funding as of June 30 of 21. So that's the latest actuarial valuation that the district has. So the district had about $4 million in assets. 2.3 million of that is the contributions. That's the dark blue area. And 1.7 million represents investment earnings.
Mr. Campos, when will we get the 22 numbers, given that it's a completely different investment year compared to last?
Yes. Actually, I take that back. This is actually assets through June 30 of 22. And if I can go to this next slide. So I believe when we looked at this earlier, I think we looked at it last in February, and we were about 4.4 million in assets at that time. So we dropped down to about $4 million. Yeah, we were at 4.4 million. We looked at this in February when we did the mid-year update. We were at 4.4 million, and we were the district was 76% funded at that time. Now the assets have dropped down to about $4 million, and the funding level has dropped from about 76% down to 70%. Sorry, Martha, this looks like we didn't get the PERS update slide in here. But I'll just report to the board the PERS funding progress. I think when we talked last February, we were at about 70% funded. And I said this picture will look a lot different the next time we look at it because of the time lag, right? So the newest valuation, which is as of 6/30/21 for PERS, which are the funds set aside for retirement benefits, there's a 1-year lag in that valuation. So it's now looking at June 30 of 21. And it now reflects the 21% earnings that PERS experienced for that fiscal year ended June 30 of 21. So the district is now at about an 80% funding level. But just as I said, you know, this will look a lot different next year. This one will look a lot different next year as well, because now we've gone from a 21% return to, I can't remember what the final loss was, but it was fairly significant for the year ended June 30 of 2022. But overall, 70% funded on the OPEB side and 80% funded on the retirement side. Those numbers are going to fluctuate year to year based on investment earnings, but the district is continues to make significant progress.
What's the threshold? Should be at what level should it be funded at?
Obviously, you want 100%.
I know that, yeah. What's an acceptable level?
It's usually 80 to 120, right? Okay. That's the range that PERS is typically targeting.
Okay, so we're pretty close to that target.
Yep.
Good.
And on the OPEB side, you want to push that all the way up to 100%.
Yeah. Okay.
So the recommendation would be to open the public hearing, entertain any questions from the public or the board members, and then finally adopt the operating and capital budgets for fiscal 22-23.
Any questions on a matter before we open up the public comment? Questions?
I don't have any.
None? Okay. Director Oro, Director Albadamos, any questions before we open it up? Public hearing?
Not right now.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Vice Chair Albadamos, any questions?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we will now open the public hearing. If there be anyone from the public wishing to comment? Anyone in the audience? Do we have anybody online?
No, Chair.
No. Okay, then we will close public hearing at this time, return to the board for further discussion, desired action.
I do have a question for Mr. Campos. It's regards to the battalion chief and the forecast that we're making. I know we are doing a half a year of that. I want to, just for the public and for the fire district's benefit here, kind of understand the projections of income, particularly as property comes online. And I've kind of just been looking at the housing market, and I don't know what numbers you're using in terms of 2021, 22 early projections of valuations for property taxes, but things have slowed down quite considerably in the housing market to where buyers and sellers are staring at each other. Sellers aren't lowering their price, buyers aren't buying. And there's predictions around the economy of a slowdown in real estate, which will slow down our potential property tax revenue. Can you talk a little bit how you projected that, and what kind of implications and what threshold would probably put us in the red? A 10% drop, a 20% drop in property tax or property prices, etc.
Yeah, all excellent questions, Councilmember Oro. It's a matter of polishing the crystal ball to a certain extent, but the fiscal 22-23 numbers that we're using are based on the estimates provided by the county auditor controller. Those numbers just came out. They're based on the certified tax roll for 22-23, and that's really looking back as of January 1 of 22. So those numbers are fairly firm for 22-23. So it's really the projections going forward where we have to make some sort of educated guess as to what those numbers are going to look like. So what we've done is we've taken the numbers that are provided by the cities or the projected increases provided by the city's property tax consultants, which is HDL. And we kind of look at that, compare that to what the district has experienced. Most of the district is within the incorporated area of the city, so those projections apply to the district as well as the city. And then we have to start layering in projected new development activity. Which again, we've held off in including that revenue up until this year when actual, they've broken ground, development has started. And so, we have to keep a really close eye on development activity going forward. There's other options the district has, kind of mitigation measures that it can take. For example, the transfer from the general operating fund to the fleet facilities and equipment fund. It's about $180,000. That's increasing over time. That can be delayed if need be. There's the operating reserve, there's the contingency reserve, there's the mitigation fee and fleet facilities and equipment fund. There's another $1 million or so, $1 million to $1.5 million there as a real contingency to the contingency, if you will. So I think there's steps the district could take to weather the storm, depending on how deep it is. But right now, we think we have a fairly conservative forecast going forward that can support those two additional positions. I know the chief would like to have 3 battalion chief positions so that he has battalion chief coverage on each shift. But we've discussed that, we've talked about it, and that last position will just need to wait to see how well development activity progresses. Hopefully that answers your question to a certain extent.
Well, I wanted you to tell me what was going to happen in the economy so I can make a decision this evening. I'd like to throw something else out there in terms of just, I think we have approving this budget tonight approves two battalion chiefs starting in January, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. I've been very supportive of that all the way through. I think it's a level of management and roles that we need within the department, particularly a growing one. I'm willing to approve this budget this evening, but I would love to have to revisit that before we make those hires, meaning that we get to approve the budget with the hires. If the economy is going swimmingly, let's make that kick. Let's move forward with those hires. But if it's not, I would love for us to, as a board, working with the fire chief and the fire department, to revisit that before we pull the trigger on those hires. Just because we, just a decade ago, I don't think it's going to be as severe, but we lived through a downturn that caused the majority of our budget in American Canyon, both for fire and for the city, is through property tax. There may be some lean times ahead, and that's my only pause in stamping a yes on this today. Those are all my comments. Thanks.
Thank you. Other comments?
Well, Chair Garcia, got to remember not to call you mayor. We have our different hats. I echo some of Director Oro's concerns. I think I raised them earlier. And I want to emphasize from an organizational, operational perspective, adding the battalion chiefs makes sense, and it's the right call. It's just a matter of, can we afford it? And I'm willing to make that leap of faith for the 2 battalion chiefs, because I think there's some opportunities that Mr. Campo just outlined that will allow us to weather that storm as we kind of run the deficit until property taxes catch up. But I would really encourage us to just stick with the 2 battalion chiefs for the time being, because it's one thing to try to absorb a $200,000 position. It's another thing to try to absorb 400. So from my perspective, I'm okay going with the budget as proposed. I would certainly support the idea of, before you pull the trigger, get everything ready, but kind of check in as we see the economy doing whatever it's going to do. So I wouldn't necessarily say that we don't pull the trigger, but maybe have at least one more check-in before you go and start the recruitment. And then going forward, for now, I'm inclined to be supportive of 2 battalion chiefs, but we may have to wait a few years until the economy and/or our budget can support that 3rd one for the time being. That's where I'm coming from on things. But again, there are plenty of red flags, but there's also a lot of plan Bs and Cs and backstops. So I'm comfortable going forward, but have my cautions, as you would expect.
Well, I think it's behooves us to excuse me, have a bit of awareness of what's going on. Caution always. I'm just trying to understand it. The recessions is more of a conversation we're having more of these days on national news, particularly with if you follow the stock market report, the economy report from the local media and the national one. But recessions are also pointed out to be cyclical. State of California seems to go through them periodically. My service on the city council was when the 2008 recession hit. A lot of that was due to, I believe, my understanding of it, there were some pretty loose restrictions with respect to people getting loans, stated income rather than prove your income. And I think that was part of that. I don't know what else led to it. I certainly think there was a pretty robust feeling of, well, money has no end.
Property values only go up.
Yeah, they'll only go up. Right. I think the house that sold for about $900,000 in 2008, a couple of years later, sold for $450,000, which was what the original asking price was. So I think we've got a different look at it now as I'm trying to understand it from just the media, both printed and internet and television. Seems to be a big piece of it is supply chain. Piece of it is workforce. Can't get enough workers to be able to build a product that we want to sell. Seems to be something all related to a COVID recovery. Just trying to get back to normal. And I don't know, maybe there's probably some machination going on in the background with people who take advantage of that. But I think, do you have a projection? Say, what if we hit a recession? What would it look like? To map out something like that for us?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir. In fact, the chief and I have taken a look at that. I don't think I have that on here it is.
3-year delay.
Mm-hmm. So, we talked about what would happen.
No, I got it.
We talked about what would happen if there were a recession that delayed development activity for 3 years. And so, and then what steps would the district take? So this kind of pushes that new property tax revenue from Watson Ranch, it pushes it out for 3 years. What we did is we deferred the transfers into the Fleet Facilities and Equipment Fund. So that was about on average about say $180,000, $185,000 a year. We delayed that for 4 years to kind of offset the lack of revenue coming in. Because that Watson Ranch revenue doesn't come in all at once. It ramps up over a 3 or 4, 5-year period. So we pushed that out. So if you see that increase in revenue in the final year in this chart compared with,
Yes, you had it.
Compared with over here.
Mm-hmm.
So that's pushing out that revenue coming in. And here we're at a deficit for 22, 23, 23, 24, then we kind of break even for a couple of years, and then it starts ramping up. When we look at this slide, it's 22, 23, 23, 24, 24, 25, 25, 26, and then it then it kind of breaks even after that. So again, this is not really drawing down any of the reserve funds of the district. With the lease purchase for the engines and the other equipment that the district, the other apparatus that was acquired in the last, say, 3 to 5 years, the enterprise lease with the command vehicles, there's not a lot of big ticket items in the near term for the district in terms of capital needs. So I think it's a good time to defer those contributions, those transfers out of the general operating fund into the fleet facilities and equipment fund, if necessary, for a few years to kind of balance things out.
Yeah, it sounds like a cautious way of addressing what's beginning to feel a little uncomfortable, a little more unknown going forward. Yeah.
And this includes those battalion chief positions.
All right.
Chair, if I could just add too with the fiscal modeling, it's tied strictly to the residential development at Watson Ranch. We have other development in progress, such as Home to Suites, some commercial development out in the Green Island Road, also the development of the ruins itself into the event center. We have Napa Cove. We have other projects that are currently moving forward that will add to the tax roll, but because of some of the difficulties in modeling, those aren't taken into consideration in this model. This is a conservative model strictly tied with the sale of the new homes at Watson Ranch. So Ken does an amazing job with a very comprehensive look, but when you do the modeling, there's not necessarily a complete 360-degree look because there are some of those other developments that will add to the tax roll that just aren't accounted for.
Thank you. Any other comment?
No, if there's no other comment, I'd like to make a motion to approve the resolution 2022 to 23, a resolution of the Board of Directors of the American Canyon Fire Protection District adopting a final operating and capital budget, the final budget for fiscal year 2022 and 23.
I'll second that.
Are we providing direction on revisiting the fire, the battalion chief hires prior to engaging? I mean, we're approving that, and just wanted to know if,
Right.
Director Joseph and I kind of talked about that, and I don't know what the rest of the board thought.
Is that part of your motion to revisit?
Yeah, I thought it was with the battalion chief, not, to revisit once we decide to hire.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'll second that motion with an understanding that staff will come back and give us the latest update before we actually go out and recruit for the bat chiefs. Is that?
Yeah, my intent would probably bring back and revisit September, October to, in order to move on the projected timeline, then we would have to start advertisement for the positions as early as December. So we would need that final clarification within the next 2 months, just so that we could continue to move forward with the process.
But this would allow him to write the job description, get everything set up. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
Start
and I'd
the
have,
process rolling, but before you pull the trigger, come back and give us the latest on the financial, all the economic forecasting and that kind of thing. But
yeah, and I'm not sure in the next 2 months what
What would change?
but there's certainly, that's an additional backstop that we could put in to make sure that this is still the sound fiscal decision that the board wants to
I think
make.
it's a matter of the comfort zone for the board of directors.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, and just a little note, you'll have an indication within a couple months because housing in Watson Ranch is about to go on sale. And you'll have clear indicators then.
Okay.
And if something crazy happens with the national economy, that might happen too. You never know.
That's right.
So it's worth a cautious check-in.
Yeah,
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Board Member Joseph,
Yes.
Board Member Oro,
Yes.
Board Member Washington,
Yes.
Vice Chair Abudamos,
Yes.
and Chair Garcia.
Yes. Thank you, Board. We'll move on now to our business. Item 8, receive and file.
Chair Garcia?
Yes?
Yes, as discussed previously in closed session, I have to excuse myself. I'm actually remote and I'm late for my meeting, if you can imagine that. There's a business matter that I have to take care of. So
Okay.
I'm gonna excuse myself. Thank you.
Understood. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Business item 8, receive and file the Public Protection Classification Summary Report.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So just recently, we completed a process that honestly happens every 5 years. It's an evaluation by the Insurance Service Organization, or ISO, Insurance Service Office, excuse me, that essentially they evaluate the performance of the fire department in relation to expected financial loss during the event of a structural fire. The Insurance Service Office will come out. They do a very in-depth evaluation of the fire department. The evaluation is broke down. 10% of the points are tied to your dispatching. 50% are for the operations, training, and prevention activities of the fire department. And then 40% is the water supply for the area served by the fire department. After ISO collects quite a bit of data, they then use their criteria to establish a numerical value to the expected loss of financial loss in the event of a structural fire for the area served by that specific fire department. The rating scenario is from 1 to 10, 10 being the essentially an unprotected, you essentially receive no service from a fire department, and 1 being the best possible rating with the most calculated minimal loss of financial loss to the insurance companies. That numerical rating is then used by the insurance underwriters when a customer comes to them for fire insurance, and underwriters. That is part of their formula where they determine what you will be paying for your fire insurance for your property. We had previously had a numerical value of 2. The range is from 80 to 90 points possible. That is the range for a 2 rating. Like I said, we just completed ours, and we maintained our rating of 2, but we increased our numerical value to 85. So we're very firmly in the ISO 2 classification, which is pretty remarkable for an agency such as ours that is fairly small. As an example, ISO class 1 would be like LA City Fire Department, right? So again, this is a direct benefit to all of our residents because in theory, the lower our number is, the lower they're going to pay for their insurance premiums. So it's looking at the statewide average. There's about 200 fire departments statewide that have a rating of a 2 or a 1. About 164 fire departments in the state have a 2. 60-ish have a rating of 1. So 1 is pretty remarkable. The average is 4 to 5 ratings. So we're enjoying a pretty substantial benefit of having a 2. As I said earlier, the rating for The ISO, 40% of it is for our water system and water delivery. So tonight, Maintenance and Utilities Director Felix Hernandez and Dominic Patrick, they were a large part of our ISO review. They had a lot of flow data and other information that they had to provide. So it was truly a team effort, and it crossed not only just the fire district lines, but also the city lines. So we're very grateful for their assistance in this project. In fact, they rated 38 out of a possible 40 points for the water. So they definitely helped us achieve the rating of 2. So with that, just wanted to give the board the update on the new classification, as well as any of the members of the public that are watching. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have regarding this matter.
Well, thank you. Congratulations on a good report. And I appreciate, certainly we do, staff who worked. Can't imagine what it's like gathering all that data. That's why we have computers. Appreciate that. Comments from the board?
I think it's a comment I had even mentioned a little earlier. You know, the obvious reaction is that, 2 is great, so what would it take to get to be a 1? And in looking at this, it sounds like it involves the category called credit for company personnel and credit for training. And so I'm assuming that if we could add more staffing, we could probably get ourselves to a 1.
Absolutely.
But that's a lot easier said than done. And so for me, I think being a 2 sounds pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, there's not many fire departments that have a 1, and I gave the example like LA City, which is a very large department. We certainly could achieve 1, but yeah, staffing, and we do a lot of training. We did about 11,000 hours of training, but we could also improve in some of the training as well.
Mm-hmm. Some of the areas seem to be pretty small difference between the credit available and our earning. Here, waters, we got 38.32, and what's available is 40. So we're looking some things in there that, I don't know, there's got to be some low-hanging fruit in here that we could probably boost up a little bit somewhere, just further analysis. But I think, it just reflects the high-quality work that is done with the fire department. Thank you. Council, staff ready for, directors ready for comment, public comment?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Any comment from directors Abadamos?
No, thank you, Chair.
All right. Public comment, please?
None.
None. Okay, we'll close public comment on that. Return to the board for further discussion, desired action.
Review and file.
The review and file, yes. All right, very good. Thank you.
Good job.
Mm-hmm.
All right, moving on with our agenda. We're now at Fire Chief oral report.
Thank you, Chair. Monday, our 4 new candidates will start their 4-week academy. So that will be a much welcome addition to the American Canyon family, and obviously much needed augmentation to our staffing, since we do have a couple existing shortages that will bring us up to full staffing. As I mentioned earlier, October 8th, we will be having an open house at our fire station at 911 Donaldson Way from 11 to 2. We invite all members of the public to come. We'll have the firefighters on hand. We have PG&E, CERT. We have Parks and Rec Department is part of the safety and promoting wellness, is promoting after-school activities and so forth that are available to the community members to get out, exercise, and so forth. So we have a lot of different groups that will be there. We have some, I know that Laura has a pretty neat game set up for helping teach kids how to exit their home. So really hoping that we get a high level of turnout from the community, especially since this is the first one that we've done for several years because of COVID. And then also just a reminder, from 11 to 12 will be the quiet open house, so that the special needs members of our community can come and get the same experience, but without maybe some of the loud noises and other activities going on, so that they feel welcome and want to come in and engage everybody that's there and learn more about how they can make themselves and their families safer here in American Canyon. So that's truly it for now. I think that, we've pretty happy with the ISO rating, with new hires coming on board. Pretty exciting times here in the fire district, and look forward to what lies ahead. With that, happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions from directors?
None from me.
Thank you. Looking forward to that open house. We always enjoy that. Okay, moving on to chair board comments, committee reports, and then we'll take up any future agenda items after that. Anything from anyone?
Nothing from me.
We have a comment. The American Canyon CERT team was honored at an event at one church, formerly was Jesus Risen Lord Church, and it's the Barnabas Award, which recognizes community activities that are very reinforcing community, recognition of services provided. And I thought, well, that was quite a thing, I think. We had any comment on that, Beth? You'd like to, since you attended?
I'll just briefly comment that it was a very nice presentation they gave to us, and I'm glad some of our CERT members could come out, but it's a pleasure to see that people are recognizing us as a value to the city, and it was great to be there with you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's just shows the value of the CERT teams being recognized within the community. And they happen to be neighbors where we have our meetings. No, actually there was several other organizations attending as well. So it speaks of value. That would conclude my report. Anything further from the board?
No.
Hearing not, we are now adjourned. Thank you all.
Good night, American Canyon.